when I sort of semi-retired from the healthcare system proper, I started to embark on some innovation type of projects, and that led me to meet a very inspiring individual who happened to be a veteran who was significantly wounded in Afghanistan. And we were trying to work with some innovation and technologies to help to support him in his recovery. And the Legion, actually, the Surrey Legion and the BC Yukon of the entire province Legion had fundraised using Poppy funds to help to build some of the technology and fund the technology to help him in his recovery. During that conversation that I had with the Legion, growing up in a small town where the Legion was located in the center of most communities across BC, if not all of Canada, I asked the question, how are Legions going to survive? The membership is dwindling with the aging veterans. The buildings are starting to look a little bit old and weathered. $2 beers and meat draws might not be really engaging communities in the same way in the future. What is the future of Legions? At the same time, having a little bit of my public health and health system background, recognized that there are some really significant needs in our communities, from a health system that we're just not able to meet all the needs of those in the health system that need support, but also in communities that need housing, that need services, that need more of an integrated approach. And that's very difficult for large health systems to be able to tackle. And so the concept became, what if the Legion was to take its asset, which was its land at that time, in the heart of, the Whalley, which was in the center of North Surrey, and contribute it in a way that we could build a vision that was focused on how do we help veterans, how do we help also first responders who are so traumatized by their work, and bring together some sort of beacon of hope for them in the future, including housing. And that's how this vision started. What we did then was we went out to the community and we held community forums. And we invited everyone and anyone who would touch the lives of a veteran and their family throughout their journey. And we listened to what was emotional and compelling stories around how the system was broken for those veterans when they returned from service, and that the first responder community was starting to experience something similar. And once we heard that, we continued to have that dialogue with clinicians, with community leaders, with political leaders and others, and said, what's stopping us from creating a vision to use assets such as Legions in the heart of their communities to build something that would disrupt the current status and create opportunity and vision for the future. And so that consultation secured and solidified that collective goal. And then we continued to have that dialogue, and I'm leading into the community dialogue and the importance of it here. We continue to have that dialogue around what should it have, what shouldn't it have, what's missing, where are the gaps, what can we do, what's too difficult to do, who's missing in these conversations. We wanted every single voice. And our commitment then to those that gave their voice was, we are going to collect that voice. We're going to secure it then in this vision, and we're going to publish that vision, and that will become our mantra towards that end. And this was important because it also helped, one, to be inspiring and encouraging all of those there that we can do this collectively, hundreds and hundreds of voices. We can create a movement. We can generate the enthusiasm and excitement. We can talk to our political leaders and understand what would be the barriers to this. Why couldn't we do this? And it helped us to understand where those barriers lied so that we could spend some time in understanding how do we overcome those barriers. It was to reach out to the larger community and those that could assist in this. And as a result of that, we committed to publishing it, because when you publish it and you've got everyone's engagement and names on that, then it really galvanizes and solidifies that this is a vision that we're all prepared to put our names, ourselves, our roles behind to achieve. And so that really did become the foundation. And we, over the following 8 years, worked with many stakeholders, explored, number of opportunities. Some worked and some did not. But we remained so unrelenting and committed, everyone, and the vision that was crafted on those days with those veterans and first responders and their families that shared their hearts with us. We said, you've defined this, and so we are committed to doing this for you. And that carried us through the difficult moments and the challenges. And we worked for 8 years straight to deliver that project. And what was unusual was all stakeholders, we held meetings every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, and almost everyone, unless they were out of the country, participated in those for 8 years. My Monday mornings looked different from there on. But it was so inspiring each time to be reminded. And every time that there was an influence or a barrier that you thought, okay, this isn't possible, we're not going to be able to pull this off, et cetera, we went right back to it and said, no, we have to do this. We have to find a way. And so it was inspiring. It was engaging. It was almost like a marketing tactic. But at the same time, it brought those out of the woodwork that felt like this was something that was really meaningful, and it gave them a place to come and engage. And I think that spirit is what carried us through all of those years to its fruition. And ultimately, not only is it a building, and we talked about that, initially we reached out to the development community and we said, this is what we're trying to achieve, but this isn't just bricks and mortar. It's what happens within this facility that is going to change lives. This is what matters. And it was very, very important to ensure that we selected a development partner that was going to have the confidence and the creative purpose-built vision within themselves to say, okay, we're willing to listen. So in other words, we're not going to just come in and we're not just going to build a building and it's going to look like this or it's going to look like that, because they're specialists in building buildings, but that they would be, and I don't want to use the word servant to the vision, but in some ways they sort of were. And I think, that's a very important part of this. It introduces risk to a developer, so they're not always all that comfortable. But I found that having a couple of us as leaders through the entire journey from beginning to full execution of the vision was really important to keep those two polar sides always meeting in the middle, always meeting and always engaging in a way that we're going to do this. And this is going to be special for the people. It's going to touch for decades and decades, if not centuries ahead. So that was the importance. And I feel it is the cornerstone of these developments. I think that there are multiple amenities and land assets. We have a vision in the sense that we have a purpose as to why we need to create housing and who we need to create housing for. And I would present and argue that those forums are extremely important, again, to galvanize that vision. Everyone understands what we're doing. People can identify what their role would be in it. We identify early on the pitfalls so that we can strategically identify how we overcome those. It just has so much value. But for me also, going out publicly and stating very proudly and boldly that you are going to change the lives of individuals through this mission is, I think, extremely important, and then be held to that. It's got a transparency to it. And that also helps to outlive political cycles, because you will have leaders at different levels of government that will come and they will go. But your vision has to be, so cemented in that foundation that it remains unwavering. And as a result, to be able to see the lives that it changes is extraordinary. And I just hope to see so much more of it. And I think now is an opportunity, because we have so much purpose and we have so many amenities and assets that we can use to really make some significant changes in our communities. So again, I go back to being absolutely thrilled, particularly that there's so many smaller communities here. Coming from a small community, I know that we can do this. I've seen it, and I wish we could do more of it. And hence why I love to share this story, hoping that it encourages others to dive in and do it. And we did build this with the intent that we would share this over and over and over again, hoping that it inspired other projects that were similar but different. But know it can be done. As difficult and as daunting as it seems in the beginning, it is possible. It just really needs that commitment, the storytelling, the engagement, and ultimately, the fortitude to see it through to its fruition. So, but I'll stop there in case there's questions or comments.
Thanks, Rowena, for the overview of the project. I was involved in one of the stakeholder meetings 100 years ago. So it's really, it was with a different organization, and it's really cool now driving past, because I find I feel a little part of ownership in that. Yeah, which is lovely. I work in the homelessness serving sector more so. I mean, veterans are part of that, but kind of not my key focus. And as I'm sure is no surprise to anybody, when there's housing that's going up, um, uh, with my population, there's often pushback from the community. I'm wondering if you had any pushback from any specific groups, or was everybody, just because of the clientele that you were serving, was everybody just fully on board?
I think with every project, as you rightly know, there's always some questions around it. Originally, while the vision was veterans, we expanded it to the first responder community, and there was a little bit of there was a little bit of a rub there that we had to work through. So that was one. The second I would say is where the Whalley Legion was located was at that time the location of what was Surrey's tent city. And so we were very concerned that the community would see that as, a gentrification, that we were disrupting that community, to build some grand fancy building. It was fascinating that spending time, one, with the community to say, this is actually what we're building. And it was interesting that, even the community that we were disrupting were supportive of that vision. They thought, oh, that's a really good thing to be doing. So that was helpful by going out to the community and having, those conversations. At the same time, we were also quite fortunate. Again, I think this project went through 3 different mayors in Surrey. It started out with Mayor Watts, and then it transitioned to Mayor Hepner, who happened to have a father who was a veteran, and so became very engaged. And I don't know how much this project fed into one of her priorities, which was to provide some alternative housing for that community that were tenting. And so there was some modular housing, which was minimal but a market improvement to help to support that. So it actually attracted other supports from the community, again, in trying to support that. So I think that those were really important. And the other thing I'll mention is, it was such an important project for the city at that time, that the political leaders also assigned it as a nexus project. And so at that time, the Nexus project, the mayor at the time identified, I think, three, for her political cycle. This was one of them, and that allowed for us to have a number of our processes expedited. So in other words, instead of, having to go to roads and having to go to, recreation and having to go to all the different departments, of which then start to take on a linear form, and then it's 5 years before you get started. They brought all the teams in. So when we had a conversation around Legion Veterans Village, there was an aggregate department from the city that was there to accelerate and expedite some of those processes to get us rolling. So I mean, we had a lot of support, but we had challenges. But I guess I go back to that original comment around being really transparent, getting out there, like just completely opening your chest to what we are doing here so that everyone can identify and voice their concerns. Then we've got time to sit down with those groups and say, okay, well, what would be solutions that would, in almost every conversation, how do we achieve a win-win here? How does the community that we're disrupting win? How does this become a reality and support that community? How do those that are in leadership roles, how does this, how does this become a win for them as well? So that was really important, I think. And I think it continues to be important in every one of these projects, so you don't encounter something that actually takes your project off the rails. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
On the ceded territory of the Notley and Stellatin territories, and we're in Fraser Lake, northern BC. We're in a small town of just under, it's definitely under 1,000. Our sawmill just shut down, so we don't have anything for people to work here for. Big industries have all shut down now. We work quite a bit with our Legion here in Fraser Lake. It's always on the verge of shutting down, but we're working hard to keep it open. I'm a little about me is I'm care aide. I am on the fire department. I wear many hats, and I operate the Fraser Lake Senior Housing Society. I'm new at it, never done it before, never operated a building before. I'm just in the works. We have a 23 apartment, 1-story building at the present time. Housing is definitely needed in Fraser Lake for seniors. I have quite a list for people waiting to get in, but there's quite a few that haven't signed up because they're going to the neighboring towns of Vanderhoof. They're quite a bit bigger than us and have already 3 to 4 senior housing already. And they're looking to build more there. So we would like to build one. It's always been wanted to happen in Fraser Lake, but we're a volunteer board. And nobody's had the commitment or the time to do it. And I just seen a need, so I ended up getting on the board, and I ended up being president. So it kind of snowballed in the past year and a half to where I'm looking for funding to make a building. Communication has been key. Small town, it can be, for some of you in small town, it can be difficult because people have a lot of ideas, but nobody wants to step up to the plate. I just sometimes what do I do now? That's always my question. What do I do, or what's my next step? Or I have lots of experience with seniors and dementia, disabilities, stuff like that. And I've always wanted, if my parents were still alive, I that's what I want to make, is something that I would make for my parents. And we've made a lot of changes to our building that we have now. It's always been a volunteer board, so it's been a lot of work for me in the past year and a half to get it updated. Right down from administration all the way up to maintenance on the building. So it's a very old building. Electrical is probably my biggest challenge right now. And getting the support from the community is not a challenge because everybody's in support of it, but it's like it's been talked about for so long that, yeah, like it's really going to happen. So there's a lot of doubt, but I'm hoping to prove them wrong, but I'm here to learn. That's my story.
Firstly, it's very sad to hear about the mill. I at one point was a chief operating officer with Northern Health, so I know Fraser Lake very, very well, and I really applaud your passion and your heart being looking for opportunities. It would feel like to me that type of a community engagement consultation might be really important because there's such a big change going on in the community to be able to really identify, okay, what is possible here and what is not? Where are your key stakeholders, including Northern Health, because you're looking at individuals that want to age still in the community, as well as the community itself and how does it rebuild and go forward. But also having homes for people who have worked there their entire lives and want to stay there and want to retire there. And it feels like that type of an engagement process would be really important. And then you also get to identify who has resources and who has thoughts and ideas, and how do you start to pursue each of those avenues to make it a reality. As you mentioned, it's really tough. You've got assets, you've got an opportunity, you have a vision, but it's bringing it all in, galvanizing it into a path, a direction, and you got to just go out there and you got to run with it and figure out what's going to work and what's not. Again, with that unwavering tenacity to say this has to happen for this community. Including some of the private sector stakeholders that they might have pulled up and gone, but there's the potential for what's to come of those assets that remain, and is there something there that can be considered. So I'm happy if you want to email me to give you any encouragement around some of the tools that we have used in the past, if it supports you in trying to figure out where you take it as far as the next step. It's really tough when you are wearing so many hats and feel that the burden and the responsibility of doing all that. That's why sometimes it's nice to get in and sort of distribute some of that. And there are many times I said in those rooms, I might be here just facilitating this, but this is everybody's responsibility in order for it to be delivered. You have to sort of take some of that burden off your shoulders a little bit and get everyone to come in, and it will be that collective spirit that helps to get it across the line at the end of the day.